Hi, my name is Roger Bain. I live in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and I'd like to show you some of the tools that I use on a daily basis here at Bain Custom Woodworking. In March of this year, I step away from a 27-year IT career to do woodworking full-time. It's been a passion of mine for quite a while. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I've been doing it on the side, working about a 75 to 80 hour week. We decided it was time to go full-time and do this while I was young enough to enjoy it. And yes, even though there's gray in my beard, I'm young enough to enjoy this. So I'd like to introduce you to some of the major tools that I use on a regular basis and why I purchased them, and if I can remember when I purchased them. So let's start with this one that I'm leaning against. This is my Harvey Alpha HW110S 36P table saw. Yes, this is the cast iron table saw. At the time that I purchased this, my funds were not available to purchase the one with the gold tinning on it. So I purchased this one and we just maintain it. That's all there is. So all the saws and planers and joiners that you're going to see today on this video are all paid for 100% by the business. And that's something that we certainly have made a purpose of, and my wife and I, to make sure that the business is self-sustaining, so it's not taking anything out of the family budget. So some of them took a while to save for. You're going to find that this table saw here took me almost a year to purchase and took me longer than that to save for it, but it was a wise decision. So let's talk about this table saw. And you're going to see me jump out of the video for a minute, but that's okay. You really only care about looking at the table saw, so don't worry if you don't see my face for a few minutes. About a year ago, it was really September or October of 2020, we decided that it was time to purchase a table saw. I have been running a Ridgid worksite table saw literally since 2006. I bought it on Black Friday 2006. Has been great for everything that I've done, and honestly it was still running, but it was coming to a point where I needed to upgrade some of the projects I was working on, upgrade some of my tools, and that was when it was time to go. I still have that table saw here. I'm actually going to put that up on Facebook Marketplace and sell that for somebody to use as a good starter table saw, because it still works. It still runs very, very well. It's just that I needed a little bit more power. I do a lot of 8/4 ash, a lot of 8/4 maple, black walnut, and that can get a little bit hard to cut through. So I needed something with a little bit more power. Let's be honest, I looked at a lot of table saws over the past year. I actually purchased a table saw back in October of 2020, but then COVID hit and delivery schedules became non-existent to a lot of companies. To no fault of their own, it just happened. So as spring came around and I knew my table saw was getting a little bit old, and I also knew I was going to do this full time, which means I was going to be using that table saw more often than I was, we really needed to make a purchase. I settled on a couple of brands, waited for deliveries, just didn't happen, to no fault of their own again. So about a month and a half ago, I really determined that it was time. We really needed to buy a new table saw. So I reached out to a couple of folks on Instagram, and they were awesome to help me. Matter of fact, I'm not going to show you the assembly of this table saw, because if you go out to Marksman's workshop, he has a fabulous video up online on how to assemble this. No sense in me reinventing the wheel when he's already done a great job. I'll make sure I put that link in this video as well, so you can get out to see him and see what he's done. But after looking at this, so let me tell you what I wanted when I went to a table saw. I wanted a good 36-inch cut, because I need a little bit more room on my saw. I wanted a 3 horsepower motor. I really didn't want a 2 horsepower. I wanted to be a little bit overpowered so that as the business grew, I was able to handle what I wanted. Wasn't quite sure on what kind of rip fence I wanted, but okay, I was going to take what came with the saw. And then there were a couple other things that I really wasn't concerned about, but I knew I had to go to a 220, at least a 3 horsepower motor. Well, if you know anything about Harvey, they don't have a 3 horsepower motor. They have a 2 horse, and they have a 4. Well, here's the 4. And let me tell you, this is beautiful. Hold on a second. I love that sound. And I can tell you right now that this Harvey table saw has handled every piece of wood I've put through it, whether I have ripped a piece of wood or cross-cut a piece of wood. This has been fabulous. I love the bigger table. Now, I told you this is cast iron, so I keep it clean and I keep it waxed. I'm actually looking at buying some product to service this with. I'll let you know how that works out. But right now, I've cleaned this and I've waxed it with a hardwood floor wax, Johnson & Johnson. That doesn't have any silicone in it, but I'm going to change some products. But I do like what I have. But let me explain to you a few things that came with it. Let's talk about this one that's sitting here right in front of me. This is the MG36. This is absolutely fabulous. I love this thing. Not only the fact that it adjusts very easily, and let me tell you how accurate it is. I just finished a project where I needed 45-degree angles. This was absolutely dead on. But I like this product. I can come out, I can get a good 36 inches this way to hold on something, and I've got a stop right here that I can set when I need to. I really, really like this product. This thing works great. I just love how this works. It's accurate. It's easy to move. And if I don't need it, I get out of the way and I hang it up on the wall. But I love it. So let's stay to this side of the table saw, just because I'm here. You've obviously already seen the buttons for starting and stopping. Let's talk about my overblade dust collection. I really wanted a table saw with over the blade dust collection. I do a lot of cedar work here. And because of that, I get a lot of fine dust. This probably takes care of 80% of that. And I get it, it's not 100%, but it's enough for me to make sure that I'm not getting this in my face all the time. This has been great. But there are times when I don't need this. And while there's a riving knife on this, sometimes I need this out of the way. It changes. Pull that lever back there, and it comes out that easily. Now let me come back here to the back of the saw. It actually comes with another riving knife. So I am never making a cut without a riving knife in my table saw. Love that. Works great. It comes with this plate. It comes with a dado face plate as well. I can show you that. All with it. This came with the price. This came with it. This was a huge plus that I didn't even expect. And I'll show you a couple things on it that I didn't expect. Let's see if I can stay out of the way of the camera. One thing, it is very smooth. It moves just that smoothly. I'm barely touching that and it's moving along. It locks down very accurately. Very, very accurately. Something that I like about it is I want my push stick nearby. That's got a magnet. It's going to hold my push stick. This push stick came with it. I will use it, but I really like this one. Another thing that's really handy on this is that European high-low fence. I can turn these knobs. First off, if I have a longer piece of wood, I can leave it here. I can lock this in. That's not going anywhere. I now have support here to support my wood, and it's just as accurate back here as it is up here. If I want to use the low side of it, I can pull this out. So if I have some very, very thin lumber, I now have this here. And if you notice here, there is a high mark and a low mark. So if I want the high mark at 6 inches, I set it at 6 inches and it cuts at 6. If I want the low mark at 6 inches, I set it at 6 inches, and now I'm 6 inches from my blade. Really works great. I love the way that it works. For the most part, I'm always at the high end of it. Perfect. I love the way it works. This is a 36 inch. You have 2 cast iron wings, and then you have, honestly, I forget what that's made of, but that's the other wing that comes with it. attaches very, very easily. I didn't think I'd ever use that width, but I have already used this a number of times at that width to cut something. Plywood, anything like that. Really works great. So you have your 4-inch dust collection on the bottom as well. This really does a great job with dust collection. And if you've noticed, down on the bottom I have some wheels. I actually purchased another brand of wheels to put underneath it. I don't move my saw a lot, but I just want the availability. If I need to move this for some reason, it's there and I can move it. Harvey table saw, love the table saw. Glad I bought it. Has done everything I've wanted it to do in the past month and a half, and I'm sure that it's going to continue to service me easily. The blade's easy to change. You have 2 wrenches. You go in there and change the blades. Really nice. Love it. Wouldn't change it for a heartbeat. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions on the Harvey table saw, by all means, feel free to email me, ask me those questions. So let's move on to the next. Let's talk about my Dewalt chop saw. This is a sliding compound miter saw. I love this saw blade, this saw. It works great. It has served me well for about 8 years. It does everything I needed to do. I've done crown molding with it. The blade is probably the only thing that's hard. It's a little bit cumbersome to change, but I've changed it so often I don't even think twice about it anymore. Love this chop saw. One of the major tools that I use. I'm using this on a regular basis. I have my chop saw hooked up to a vacuum power strip, so when I turn the power strip on, the vacuum comes on and the chop saw does. And I did that when I changed over to the Harvey table saw. I needed a dedicated dust collection for that on this side of the shop. My dust collection's on the other side of the shop. But it works great. I love my chop saw. And if you notice, if you were looking at my Harvey table saw when I was at it, and let's move this a little bit. If you notice, the end of my chop saw finishes right there at my table saw. So I actually use my table saw, the extension of my table saw, as an extension or outfeed table of my chop saw. Works perfectly that way. Love my, I can move the bench. It's on rollers if I need to, but I do love my Dewalt chop saw. I will continue to use that for quite a while. So let's jump over to the other side of the shop and see what we have over there. So I mentioned my dust collection system a few minutes ago. This is not the most expensive dust collection system, but I'm here to tell you it does a really, really good job for me. I purchased this dust collection system from Harbor Freight quite a while ago, quite honest with you. If you notice, I have a Thane baffle on it. It 30-gallon can underneath that gets most of the larger particles. And then I actually have an outside shed that my dust goes into that I clean out on a very regular basis. But that keeps most of the dust out of my shop. So that's handling all of the tools in this shop. And I have 2 lines coming out of it. I have a remote control. But I did mention my dust collection system. And it works great for me. So let's talk about this guy. This is one of my other major tools. And remember, I've said earlier that I have paid cash for everything that I've purchased for the shop here. That way we can stay out of our family budget. We work it out very well that way. So understand that means that I have taken time to save money to purchase these. Now there are some items that all of a sudden something breaks and you need to buy something. I get that. But we really want to stay out of debt with the business. So yes, it's taken me time to purchase things, and I've had to learn to do things other ways. But once I purchase the tools, it makes my projects night and day. So let's talk about the joiner. I had a smaller joiner, workbench top style. Worked great for the little projects that I have, but I needed something bigger. I looked at the 6-inch, really wanted that 6-inch because it didn't take a lot of space. Ran on 110. This is 220. I have a separate 50 amp breaker for that. For my Harvey table saw that I've talked about earlier, there's a separate 30 amp breaker for that. I ended up buying the Grizzly because I like Grizzly. I like what they've done. I like what they purchased. And this one has been great. It's got a spiral head on it. So when I send something through here, it cleans up the face of my wood almost to the point where I can sand it starting at 120 grit without any problems. I certainly use my micro jig push stick for this as well to keep my hands away from that. So let me tell you what I do with this. When I start a project, I'll overcut my lengths on my chop saw, my miter saw, and I'll bring them over here. I will surface one face, then I'll surface or edge one edge. So I have a good face and a good edge. And then I'll take it to my surface planer. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So this being long enough to handle a good 8-foot board for me, that's why I bought this. I needed something long enough so that if I pushed an 8-foot board through, I didn't have to worry about supporting it over here. It was going to be supported without a problem. It's got great adjustment here. Once you set this parallel, it don't touch it. And I can readjust it if I need to. I've never found that need. I also have, because it's a spiral head, each bit in here, or each cutter, has 4 cutter heads on it. I can turn them. I've had this now for 2 years. I've yet to have to turn them. I probably should start thinking about it pretty soon. But right now, it's still cutting great. Why mess with it? So I'm not going to mess with it. It adjusts very easily back and forth. I love the height control. I don't do it anything but square. I don't do angles. I don't do anything. I do everything square. Works great. But let me explain something that I do with this. So let's say I'm making a cutting board and I want it 16 by 16. Once I get everything edged and face here, go to my planer, which we'll talk about in a minute. When I go to my table saw, I'll cut these pieces instead of 8 2-inch pieces. I will cut it 8 2 1/16 inch piece. That way I have room to come over here. Let's say I put down my cutting board together and I got a joint that's bad. They don't work well. I want them tight. I don't want to have to squeeze them. I want them tight. What I'll do is I'll take these 2 boards and I'll take their faces on top and I'll put them together like this. I'll come back here to the joiner and I will bring them through the joiner like this, so that when I'm done, these 2 edges here are coplane and they come together perfectly well. The other thing that I will do with this is, reason for that 1/16 of an inch, is when I get to my outside board, it's going to have saw marks on it possibly. I can come back now here and I can take that 1/16 of an inch off here on the joiner, and it will get rid of all of those saw blades marks for me. This has been an invaluable tool for me to use. The only downside I have with this is I have a 4-inch dust port down here. Every once in a while, it'll get clogged. And I don't know if it's something that I'm doing, the type of wood that I'm doing, whatever it is. Very easy to clean out. I clean it out and I'm good to go. And the only reason I know that it's clogging is sometimes I'll get a little blowback with sawdust out of the top here. That's how I know it's having a problem. I just shut it off, clean it out, and I'm good to go. But invaluable tool. I would never ever go with less than 8-inch again, unless it was a room issue, because I really like having the ability to do an 8-inch board. As I said, I buy all my rough lumber that way. Normally, most of them are at least 8 inches, and I don't have to waste and cut off 2 inches to run that face through my joiner. So I love my Grizzly 490X. Wouldn't trade it for $1 million. All right, let's talk about the last tool that I use for prepping my projects. And it's my Ridgid 13-inch planer. I have this planer now since about 2013. This has been fabulous. It has been there every time I've needed it. However, earlier this year, I ran a hard piece of poplar through it, and I heard something. Didn't know what it was. I heard something. It got really loud. Took it into the repair shop, and because this is a registered tool with Ridgid, has a lifetime warranty with it, they'll repair it. So I left it with them. It's about 3 weeks. They literally replaced the entire motor assembly, the motor, all of the bearings, all of the bushings. Everything but this outer casing is brand new on this machine. So I expect to get another 4 or 5 years out of this. It has 3 cutter knives in it, very easy to change, takes about 15 minutes. I can send a piece of rough lumber through here, so when I'm done doing the surfacing on the joiner, I'll come over here and I'll surface the other side so that it's so both faces are coplane before I go to the table saw. As long as it's under 13 inches, I'm sending something through this. It works great, has not failed me, and their warranty is great. So let's talk about all of these. So you've seen the Ridgid surface planer, you've seen the Grizzly joiner, you've seen the Dewalt miter saw, and you've seen the Harvey table saw. They're all different vendors. As I said earlier, everything I do is by cash. We try to save for each major item that we have to purchase. So at that point, I'm looking for the best bang for my buck. And sometimes that means I can buy the same brand that I have, but a lot of times that means I'm buying a different brand because of whatever, sale item, accessories, whatever. This works for me. It doesn't work for other people, and I'm fine with that. But for me, these are the tools that I've chosen to use, and they work great. Will I replace some of them in the future with other brands? Possibly, but at that point, I'll do the research to get the best bang for my buck and purchase the brand that does that for me. I won't purchase it because it's a brand name. I'll purchase it because it gets me the job done that I need done when I need it done. These have been great tools. So what you've seen in my shop are the 4 major tools that I use to prep wood for a project. You've probably seen, as I've gone through my shop here, other tools in the shop. We'll talk about those in another video, and those are more of my finishing tools. Once the wood's prepped, the wood's glued, I've got my dry assembly done, now I'm going to go use my finishing tools. We'll talk about those in another video. I greatly appreciate your time listening to this. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any comments, be my guest. Leave a comment. I do my best to get back to everyone, whether they comment that they like their stuff or they don't like my stuff. I get it. Not everybody's identical. We're all going to have different tastes. As long as the job gets done, that's what I'm looking for. Also, please follow us on Instagram. We have a very active Instagram feed. I try to put up at least 1, sometimes even 2 items a day, depending on what's going on in the shop. We also have a Facebook page and a Pinterest page. All of them are Bain Custom Woodworking. You'll find us on all of those. So please, if you like them, like what you see, subscribe, send others our way. We're always looking for people that I can help. And I'm not an expert in everything. There are things that I'm learning every single day. But I can tell you from my Instagram feed alone, not only have I learned from other people, and they have helped me by direct messages, by emails, by voicemails, I've been able to help other people as well. So please, thank you for listening to this, and please contact us. Thank you.